Welcome to Co-Opinions. My name is Josh, and today I have Brent with me.
Hey.
We are wrapping up our 3-part series on the 3D Zelda games, and we have some meaty games to talk about for these last two. But Brent, why don't you tell me about the stuff you've been playing since we recorded the last episode?
Knocked out FF15.
And what'd you think of that?
I really enjoyed it. I got into it. It is my first full Final Fantasy game, though, so...
And as far as accessible new Final Fantasy games go, I don't think you could have picked a better one, especially since you started playing it and since I started playing it, it has been patched significantly. So you now have suits of armor that can make you invincible.
Yes, you do.
You have a spell that can one-shot almost anything. You really should go home and try to take out the adamantoids with that.
Yeah, I'll try.
I remember one of our buddies said it took him 10 casts to one-shot him. So, anyways, you also listened to our podcast about it.
I did.
And you said you found yourself...
I agreed to an extent on, like, the story but I liked the story, but it did have issues. I found myself wanting to know more about this world that we were exploring, but the characters were great enough that I was driven no matter what small story issues there might have been.
And we actually found out at Tokyo Game Show that there's going to be some kind of story content coming that gets more into the backstory of Lady Lunafreya and her brother.
Ooh.
At least that's how Chris, longtime friend and contributor of the Co-Opinions podcast, saw it. So I'm curious about that because I found Lunafreya, as stated in the podcast, to be a very strong character, even if you didn't see her very much.
Yeah.
So, anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think you guys covered a lot of it. I don't think I can really cover much more on that.
Okay. Since we last recorded, had I beaten the Danganronpa spinoff?
I don't remember.
This says that I beat it. So I should have beaten it. So I'm going to assume that I had beaten it. So since then, the things that I have played and completed were... Oh, no. This was... Yeah, okay, I did beat it. The things that I had beaten and completed, one moment, was I got Platinum on a couple games, including I Platinum Sundered by Thunder Lotus Games. Super good game, but when you take the Corrupted path, which allows you to make all your abilities different, the mobility goes up significantly, and I say it's a much easier game. The final boss also wasn't that bad once you knew what was going on, so it was still highly enjoyable. And the Homestuck game, Hive Swap, the first act finally came out, and I played through that twice, actually. Once just to beat it, and a second time to get all the achievements I missed. It was good. I would have loved this game 3 years ago. I still liked it, but I would have loved it 3 years ago. It still had good writing. The puzzles weren't too difficult, but not too simple. The music was great. I like the characters. So, eventually I would say check it out.
I feel like I need to have read the complex.
Nope. Anything else, Sassafras?
No, I'm good.
And... not to date the episode, but the third Danganronpa game comes out real soon, and I am real excited. So excited. Can't wait to stream it and turn off all the comments. Good times. Anyways, let's launch right into the two games that we're going to be rounding out this series with, Skyward Sword and Breath of the Wild. Now, these games to me couldn't be about more opposite in a lot of ways, but we'll, again, talk about them in the release order. The first one was going to be Skyward Sword. This one was significant because it was the only Zelda game on... No, it was... Twilight Princess came out near the beginning, but it was supposed to be GameCube.
Yeah, it was both.
And then Skyward Sword came out real close to the end and made good on one of the original promises that the Wii had, which is the one-to-one motion tracking. This was contentious for a lot of reasons. The game had... Was it a why did it take so long to make this game?
I don't remember if there was actually trouble in the development or not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there Well, it took them a long time to make a 1-to-1 Wii Motion Plus controller, because I'm brought back to just connectivity issues with the original Wiimotes when a friend of ours first got his Wii, and we were playing, I believe it was Red Steel, and the signals would cross, forcing both of us to accidentally, for a brief seconds, take control of the other person's character.
So let's talk. I think we have previously been hitting the story on a real high level.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about that first.
Okay.
Which is going to be difficult because out of all the Zelda games, this hands down had the longest necessary story. It took me 40 hours just to beat this game.
Well, I think personally, it took a lot of lore that had been hinted at in previous games and laid some pretty significant groundwork on them.
And we'll get into our disagreements about it. But anyways, so you start off in a island in the sky called Skyloft, and you are testing so you can ride your bird around.
Yeah, you're like becoming a
knight, I thought.
Yeah, you have to protect Skyloft.
Mm-hmm. And at the end of this, the Zelda of this game falls off of Skyloft.
Yeah, she gets kidnapped, I believe.
She is no longer on Skyloft, and you have to go after her.
Yeah, I believe when you go up to like the goddess statue, the goddess of Hylia statue, which this is the first game I believe Hylia is mentioned in fully.
Okay.
You go up to the statue because you're doing some rite of passage thing, or you're led up there. I'm trying to remember how. Because that's how you get the sword.
Oh, yeah. So it says, Island Statue of Hylia by Fee, who is who is basically your helper in this game.
She is your Midna. She is your dragon boat.
She is your incredible Navi.
Yeah.
The most significant of all those.
But probably...
She's the most irritating, too.
Navi, or...
No, I really think that Fee was the most irritating.
Really?
Almost entirely because of the battery thing. I could not stand when your batteries started running low. It's like, Master, the batteries on your Wiimote are running low. Master, the batteries on your Wiimote. I know, I'm cheap. I'm not switching them out. I think it would have brought me great joy if when the Wii remote died, she'd be like, Master.
I guess I never had... I don't know, I didn't have that.
There's no possible way you didn't have that.
Or I don't remember it. So, I guess we need to start by prefacing that this is like the earliest game in the series.
Yes, you find out over the course of the game that this is canonically the first game in the series. It is back before the Minish Cap game. It's long before Ocarina of Time.
There is no Hyrule.
There's no Hyrule. In fact, for the first half of the game, the Hylian crest doesn't even have the Triforce on it.
It does not.
And the Triforce actually isn't a significant part of this game. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. It says that you land at the temple, which
Temple of Time.
Is it the Temple of Time?
I think you don't know it at the time.
But you land at the temple, and this big, weird, goofy-looking monster pops out.
Yeah, and you have to get it back into the area that it's sealed and force the sword into the pedestal to seal it back in.
No, it's not the sword. There's like a little pin or something.
Okay, yeah.
So, the sealing rod or whatever it is. And what do you spend the game running around doing? Like, I don't remember...
Powering up the sword.
You're positive?
Yeah, I'm positive on that. A lot of it is powering up the sword. You have to find Zelda, I believe, at first.
Okay.
You when you land, you meet Impa.
You don't know it's Impa at the time.
You don't.
So you meet a really old person
in the Temple of Time, the destroyed temple in front of you. She tells you what's going on. I think she lays down some backstory.
Yeah, about how the Demon King or a great evil or something, was defeated and sealed away, and that's what's trying to pop out every time.
And that's why humans live in Skyloft, because the goddess Hylia took them up there to protect them.
Yes. And you meet the antagonist, Girahim, who is one of the most effeminate bad guys in the world, And he is a very odd duck. And at the end of the first temple, you actually have to fight him.
Yeah.
Which is hands down the hardest fight in the game.
Oh, yeah.
Correction. Second hardest fight in the game for me, and I'll tell you why when we get to the hardest fight. So this is the first fight where you find out you have to use the one-to-one motion.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he will just beat you mercilessly. And really, this is getting ahead of the point, but you fight him again in the last temple. I think it's the last or second to last.
Yeah.
And it's not as hard because you spent the whole game using motion controls at that point. So, I don't know. I thought that was interesting. Almost everybody had the exact same issue.
I think for the motion control was, they tried to keep true on a promise people wanted from the Wii. It just didn't work out because I think what people want in this instance was something they didn't understand.
Apparently, you're trying to track Zelda down like the whole game.
Okay.
Apparently.
Yeah, but as you're going, you are powering up the Master Sword.
I assume you are correct.
Because as you go...
Oh, and then sets out to strengthen the... So I guess you run around the whole area first, finding Zelda. Then once you find Zelda, she gets, like, kept in the temple. And then you have to power up your sword so you can defeat the sealed evil, who is actually Demise.
Should we preface this that... Should we have prefaced this that we hadn't played this game in like 6 years?
Yeah, we haven't played this game in 6 years, and unlike every other Zelda game, I will get to the opinions real soon, but I see no replayability in this game, personally. But anyways, you run around and you power up the sword, and the sword allows you to defeat the evil, who turns out to be a proto-Ganon.
I feel like you've skipped over it a lot.
What did I skip over?
So, yeah, you're told, you travel back to an older Temple of Time, which raises a lot of questions. At some point.
Yeah, somehow you go back in time, somehow.
Yeah, Impa helps you open up a portal, because you have to go back, because that's where Zelda's been. You have to go back to meet her. You meet a younger Impa from like 100 years or something ago. You find out all the stuff that's you get told the backstory that this is the part where it's like, interesting lore compared to all the other games.
It's kind of interesting.
The three goddesses created the land, and then they handed it over to Hylia to cultivate it.
I accept that these games were not thought of like this was going to be a whole big thing back when they developed it, but this isn't even how it's explained in Link to the Past. They still talk about the three goddesses in Link to the Past. Like,
yeah. But to be fair, they don't talk about Hylia and anything
other than Breath of the Wild.
Do they talk about her? Yeah, I guess.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, okay.
Continue.
They hand it over to her, then Demise appears to take over the world with his shadow monsters from another dimension, which we'll get into that in a second, and all these other monsters that you fought throughout the game. He attacks. Hylia bands together, the Great Warrior, who of course is the proto-Link, I guess, in this.
There was actually a manga that came out that talked about that, but I never read it.
And then all the other sentient beings of the land to fight them, while she took the humans, especially up into the sky, to save them, because apparently they couldn't be bothered to fight this war. So that's how Skyloft gets up there, and then you find out, you find out that when the warrior defeated or imprisoned
Demise, it made him into the big, goofy-looking
monster, and because they didn't know what was going to happen, Hylia then reincarnated herself.
Oh, yeah, as
Zelda. And that is how, from there on out, you find out that Zelda
is kind of the same Zelda every time.
Yeah, and that's how you find out that the Link is kind of the same Link every time.
Mm-hmm. And are we cool to jump to near the end at this point?
Yeah,
so while you're running around powering up your sword, Girahim is trying to release the imprisoned, because it turns out that he is actually the lackey of the imprisoned. And this was the one cool thing for me in the game, because Fi is your spirit sword, and she's guiding you the whole way. And as you're having this final fight with Girahim, he changes his forms, and I didn't even notice what he started looking like. But he started flashing every once in a while, and he'd be a weird-looking sword. And it turned out he's the sword spirit of Demise's sword, the Imprison. That was an awesome twist.
Yeah.
That was an amazing twist. And it actually made me a little jealous because that meant Fee could be so much cooler. Even though he wasn't really cool until that point. But this is where I was super stoked because he actually becomes a big jaggedy sword with an upside down Triforce on it. And I can't remember, I think it's before you go fight Demise, you actually put together the Triforce.
I believe so.
I don't remember why, and it was a
I
weird...
think you have to have it to, like, get rid of him. I don't remember. It's been a long time now.
Yeah, I know you have to put it together. It's not very well done, and I just was not a fan of this game for a lot of reasons. But then you fight Demise, mano-y-mano. He's got his big anti-master sword versus your master sword. This was the hardest fight in the game for me. You want to know why? I never realized that if you held your sword up, it charged it.
Yeah, I found that out pretty quick.
I didn't. So I just kept slamming myself into this electric monster.
Yeah, that would suck.
Yeah, it was the worst. I don't even know how I beat him. I honest to God don't. So,
but when you defeat Demise,
then he says
swears that
his hatred will be reincarnated forever against the hero and the goddess. So he is actually Ganon, how it's always the same Ganon every time, kind of, sort of. So,
yeah. Which I kind of feel like before this game lays that down solidly.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like before this, it was already kind of apparent that that was always a thing.
Okay, we cool on the general overview then?
Yeah.
That was the most general overview. I realized we condensed 40 hours of game into about 10 minutes of talking. I understand it's a gross oversimplification. We're here to talk about our opinions on the game. My opinion is this game was not very good. Now, several reasons for that. I feel control-wise, I feel like they tried to jimmy a bunch of functionality they'd promised into this game. The one-to-one control thing, which also then led to like the bomb rolling, which was so pointless. I felt like the bug, like so many things were done.
The bug.
The bug wasn't bad, but like this game had so much motion control gimmick nonsense, and you hate that.
I do, which is why this is interesting. I don't know. Yeah, I think there were promises made that people wanted so badly, and they didn't know what they were getting, so people were upset by it.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of figured it was coming. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I get there's probably the thing. My expectations for motion control were so low that it doesn't affect me.
It inhibited my ability to enjoy the game because it was much higher fidelity, but it wasn't perfect. And a game that requires that level of involvement needed to be perfect. So there were times where I would go fighting things and they would guard high, so I'd try to go low, but because the Wii remote functions on infrared, it'd be like, you mean go right, correct? No! And then I'd get gutted because Girahim was a heartless monster. Anyways, that's just on the controls. Like, I thought that, okay, gameplay-wise, every Zelda game since Ocarina of Time has what is basically a hub area. Ocarina of Time had Hyrule Field, Majora's Mask had Termina Field, the Great Wind Waker had the Great Sea, Twilight Princess again had Hyrule Field. This had whatever they called the sky. I'm going to say the Great Sky. It was so boring. Like, it was worse than the ocean. There was almost nothing up there. Occasionally you found weird floating rocks, but what it was the most boring overworld, period. You didn't even think of it as an overworld because there was so little. It was basically just a hub that connected you to really long pre-dungeons before the actual dungeon. Because the areas it took you to was such a long puzzle that wasn't even an area. That was just part of the dungeon.
Because I would call similarity between the sky dungeons to like the Twilight dungeon things you had to do before you
there was some kind of thing where you had to play hide and seek. I don't remember. Well, you had to go into, like, there were areas. I don't even remember why you did it now. I don't. Because I disliked it so much. You would run around, and when your Heidi meter ran out, then monsters would come and try to kill you. And then if you messed up, you got kicked out of the sacred realm and had to start it all over. That was a pain in the butt. That was like a worse version.
Oh, yeah. Okay, now you're saying I remember this now?
Yeah, that sucked.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about that sucking.
I mean, yeah, I'm not going to say it was... There are things I didn't like, but there are things about every one of these games I didn't like. I still love them, but...
This game, out of all the 3D Zeldas, was easily my least favorite. They wanted to tell a story. Now, I feel like I'm jumping ahead to my least favorite thing here, but they wanted to tell a story so bad they lost the spirit of these games to me. They basically held your hand. They were giving you tutorials in the final dungeon. Like, come on. If you have not explained how to play the game well enough by the end of it, something is wrong. That is why I loved Breath of the Wild so much, and we'll get to that at Breath of the Wild, but it wasn't even that they were introducing things that were progressively elaborated on. They're like, we're going to do this different thing now, but it's so different that we got to spend about 3 minutes stopping the action to be like, here's what you're supposed to do.
What does that? Well, my argument there would be like Twilight Princess. They still had you were fighting the Forgotten Warrior, who was probably Link, to get new sword maneuvers.
Yes, but those weren't necessary. I just beat Twilight Princess HD with like 2 of the techniques.
Okay. I'd beat them with all of them.
Yeah, but you had to seek them out.
Yeah, but you can't get all of them until closer to the end of the game.
That's fine, but you don't have to do it. This game will straight up stop the action to be like, and now here's this extra thing. We didn't even talk about the fact you have a harp because it does so little that it's not even worth mentioning.
No.
Not even. And the game, there is openness to it, but in only the loosest sense. You can go to these different areas to power up your sword and look for Zelda in one of 3 ways, but nobody ever does it that way. They always do it the exact way the game suggests you do it. So this game, the complaint that people had, not nearly as extreme, about FF13, how they stuck you in a corridor and said, see you in 60 hours. This game kind of felt like that to me. It played better and was prettier. If some people get mad about that. I thought it was more graphically appealing, and I didn't hate almost everybody in it. So this was definitely better than FF13, but there's a reason I contemplated replaying it. If they came out with it on the Switch, I might buy it on principle, but in practice, I have no drive to play this game again. So go ahead.
I will at some point. I'm not going to convince you
You're
to
not.
like it. So
it's been
festering. I enjoyed it. There were things the upper world, I disliked it. The same reason I disliked the ocean, which was boring as hell. But that's something that the HD version fixed immensely for that.
Yeah,
which I would hope if there was an HD version of it, that they would fix that.
What would they fix? First off, I'm going to say that my opinion here is influenced by a thing I read online. There were just so many little tweaks they could have made. It was dull. Do you remember the color? It was almost light. It wasn't bright. They needed to make it a bright, crisp blue. It just felt boring all the time. Nothing about it was exciting. They tried to make you care about that bird you rode around on. You cared a little bit, but that was no Epona. They did not develop it well enough. They tried to make you care more about Groose, who actually your rival, who arguably may have been a tid more interesting than Link.
Link can be dull in some games.
He can be, but this was one of his duller iterations, which is saying something since this was one of the times where they were really trying to establish what kind of character he was. I will also readmit that it has been years. This game came out in 2009? No, that's impossible.
2011.
11. I have not played it since 2011. I beat it in early 2012. I started playing it as soon as I got it, which I believe was Christmas of that year. I was not a fan. There were a lot of things that were interesting about it. I don't know what they could change about it for me to have a Twilight Princess-like reversal where I go, I am not a fan of this game, to I didn't really understand it right. I will entertain it if they come up with some way, but after this game, that was when they made Link Between Worlds. That was such a radical departure from this that I gobbled it up so instantly. And it's interesting. Well, no, you don't like openness in your games. I do not. So maybe that's why you were such a fan of Skyward Sword, since it had none.
I like some, but I don't like too much.
Well, when you are presented with almost anything, when you don't have direction, you don't experiment. You don't. In my experience. For example, when we were just playing through The Unfinished Swan, you were so fixated on the only box that could move, you didn't look around for signs anywhere else of where you could go. So after I realized you'd been smacking the same box for 7 minutes, like, Brent, why don't you check the stairs? Because this box moves, so it must be something with the box. I feel like that's a decent example.
It's fine. Yes, not 100% true, but it's decent.
Okay.
I do experiment, but not... I don't like them just throwing you in someplace like I felt like older Zelda games were. And maybe it's because I was a kid, where I didn't understand where the fuck I was supposed to go.
Well... The only ones that I would agree with that on are the first 2 Nintendo games. Everything past that had a map with numbers of where you could go. All of them.
Well, I didn't play Link to the Past till I was older.
I know. You still haven't beaten it, though. Embarrassing. Anyways, moving on. What else would you like to say about Skyward Sword?
I mean, I liked the story. There were gameplay issues, but again, I think my expectation on motion control was so low that it couldn't hinder that.
I would have liked the story. The story fundamentally was interesting, but the way it was delivered, it almost seemed like it would have been better as like an anime series. Like it seemed, again, like they were so dead set on telling a story that it almost feels like they put a backseat to almost everything else. That is my opinion.
I'm mixed on that. I can see it, and I would like to... There are 2 lore things I've liked that I found really interesting, which is the idea that the Skyloft people are...
they end up turning into the weird bird
people
thing
from Twilight Princess.
Like the Ukuku or something?
Yeah. And the possible idea that the part of the army of demise who come from a dark dimension are the Twilight people, and that is why they are treated the way that they are.
Well, but Twilight Princess said the reason they were treated that way, I thought, was because they practiced magic.
Yeah, but there was some other stuff that I can't remember off the top of my head when I finished. She says some other cryptic things.
Who is she?
Midna.
Okay.
When they're explaining some stories. She says something else that I don't remember right now. That's where people have always taken that.
All right. Anything else on Skyward Sword before we move on to the best 3D Zelda game, period?
No, we can move on to the best one.
So, a handful of years ago, probably not that long, they said that there was going to be a new 3D Zelda game. People were stoked. And then they showed Link somebody riding a horse. It was very obvious where this was going because it was shown at a Nintendo conference. Then a giant spider robot started chasing behind. He did an awesome flip off of the horse. Hood came down. He pulled out this weird sci-fi looking arrow and shot him. Breath of the Wild coming at some point. They kept pushing this game and pushing this game and pushing this game. And correct me if I'm wrong, Brent, but weren't you super salty about the fact that they were going to put it on the Switch?
Yes.
Yeah, you were unbelievably salty.
Well, because I think the Wii U, much like the GameCube, has gotten a shaft. So
the Wii U, that's an opinion for a different time.
But that has something to do with my salt.
And I knew what was going to happen, and you knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, I saw it coming.
Yeah, especially after the Wii U, they needed a killer app when it launched. And there is no killer app than a new 3D Zelda game.
It's not.
In fact, Nintendo was so dead set on this Zelda game being their killer app that E3 2015, was it 15 or 6? It had to be 16. The only game that they showed was the new Zelda game.
That's all they came with.
And everybody's like, what in the world are they doing? And it turned out to be this runaway hit of E3. Everybody loved it. They're like, oh man, this is like Skyrim Zelda edition, except better.
One thing I'm really glad, because I didn't actually ever fully watch the tutorial.
Mm-hmm.
So when you were playing it that first time, we made that joke where you're like, don't you know how the game starts? I'm like, you wake up from cryo sleep, and you're like, kinda. I'm like, you're dead serious? I was just making up right now. Like, I'm not serious. Mm-hmm. So I appreciated that I held myself from actually watching that I was...
Well, and it was funny, too, because somebody else who'd started playing it before me goes, man, I've been doing this thing, and I go, stop talking. What? I'm trying to keep this totally unspoiled. I've heard that one of the joys of this game is, learning things by doing. You talking is robbing me of that. Well, what about basic gameplay mechanics? Nothing.
The only part I will argue against that is the elephant fight, where watching you just...
You're getting way ahead of ourselves.
I'm just saying, there is a joy by doing and then learning how you did it the hard way.
God. That was embarrassing on a lot of levels. But, so, Link wakes up in a cave. Long story short, you get a bunch of abilities from shrines around.
Well, you're met by an old man.
You're met by an old dude. Old dude says, go and activate this dealy bop. When you activate the dealy bop, a tower and a bunch more towers pop out of the ground.
All over Hyrule.
And you see some other areas activate. Those areas are shrines. He says, go to a shrine and I'll give you my awesome glidey cloak. You go to it, and he floats on down and goes, I meant get all 4 of them. As you go to all 4 of them, you unlock the abilities for this little tablet you get when you wake up. The tablet's called the Sheikah Slate. And through the course, you get, what is it? Stasis, Bomb, Magnet, and Freeze.
Yeah.
Yeah. And once you get all those, you go to where they intersect. You find out the old man's really... the ghost of the King of Hyrule. He gives you the backstory, and that's Zelda wasn't being very princessly and was digging up ancient technology. She dug too deep and too greedily and unleashed the Balrog, where in this case the Balrog was Ganon in the form of a giant nightmare cloud. Hands down the most intimidating version of Ganon, bar none.
Yeah.
And he says that she was consumed. I'm like, okay, he's being figurative. Turns out later he wasn't being figurative, but we'll get to that. So, anyways, he gives you your quest for the game. And when he came up, he turned all the ancient technology against the Hylians, sorry. Yeah. And that included the giant... robo animals,
the
guardian beasts, piloted by 4 races that you've seen in previous games: a Gerudo, a Goron, a Rito, and a fish person, a Zora, which are weirdly less fishy in this game. They're different.
They are.
Anyways, we're getting ahead. And it also turned all the spider robots against people, and genocide was committed. Yeah.
And unleashed other robots that had been hidden in some spires.
Mm-hmm. So, the princess has been spending the last 100 years trying to keep Ganon from breaking out from his terrible nightmare cloud. And so your thing is,
you wake up, you have no memory.
You wake up, you have no memory whatsoever. This is where you're getting all the backstory. And he gives you 2 things to do. He says, defeat Ganon, that's the big one, and someone in Kakariko Village might be able to help you. So you go to Kakariko Village, you find Impa. Impa says, oh, you can totally restore the Guardian Beasts. Just find them and fix them.
And if you go to these locations and these pictures in the Sheikah tablet, they may help you remember some stuff.
Mm-hmm. So here's one of the... Okay, we need to finish the story real fast before we get into what's awesome about this game, i.e. almost everything. And long story short, very long story short, you go to where the guardian beasts are. You don't have to. You can go straight to Ganon as soon as you jump off the Great Plateau. It'd be really hard, but I've seen people do it. And you can bring back the guardian beasts, then go to Hyrule Castle, fight Ganon, who looks like a total monster in this game. And then you fight second form of Ganon, who is
the big monster.
The giant. Well, so you fight the big pig monster Ganon, which is essentially only a cinematic fight. Like they give you the strongest arrows in the game.
They give you spots to shoot at him.
But this is much more cinema fight than like the fight with Ganon Beast. And once you defeat him, then Zelda literally pops out of him, like she was in his stomach. And then if you've gotten all the memories from doing all the side stuff, and if this seems like a really concise plot summary, that's because it can be really concise. We'll get into all the side stuff. Like when you go to any of the guardian beasts, they start introducing characters. Now, fun fact, I didn't realize they were marked on the map. So for the first 3 guardian beasts, I just wandered around the map until I found.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't realize that there was an objective that showed you where they were. But as you're walking around and you're meeting people, the game world is set up in such a way, I think I want to go check that thing out. And when you get over there, you see more stuff that you're like, ooh, what's that thing?
That one's funny to me because that's somehow how I completely missed. So one of the things in the game is there are stables.
Yes.
Throughout all of Hyrule that you take your horse to. So either through Amiibo, you can get Epona. Through 2 Amiibos, you can get Epona, register her, and have her as your horse. You can also capture wild horses, use them. That's a lot of fun. I had several. You can also capture 2 of the legend.
Yes, you can carry what is supposed to be Zelda's horse and what is supposed to be Ganon's horse.
Ganon's horse is huge. That thing is a pain. Anyways, somehow I missed an entire stable for the majority of the game because somehow I missed an entire spot of the map. I just kept going around it because once you start opening the shrines and areas, you can teleport.
And there are so many things about this game that are amazing. One, they give you all the quote-unquote items from the get-go. They don't gate any progress behind item abilities. It's your understanding of knowing how to use the abilities. You can go anywhere at any point once you leave the Great Plateau, and you have the same skill set anywhere, which is amazing because the accessibility is through the roof.
For the most part. I mean, you do have to, to go to the Goron village, you have to get that potion to get up there.
Well, you don't necessarily, you can, or I've heard, I've seen people do that. And that's where the game is semi-gated. For example, you can't go to the Zora place until you can't go to the Zora place by just climbing stuff, because in this game, you have a stamina meter, and climbing in the rain is near impossible. Yeah. And in the Zora area, it is constantly raining until you defeat the beast. And this is kind of its own pre-dungeon area, because when you go there, you have to follow along a path. When you get there and defeat the beast, all the rain lets up, and then you can traverse it like you normally would. But same kind of goes with the Goron village. You have to be on a very specific path. Otherwise, it's almost impossible. And you have to get the fireproof armor. Yeah. You can't do that area without the fireproof armor. The Rito village has something semi-similar where you need cold-resistant gear.
Yeah. Well, especially
when you're flying. Yeah. And the other one in the desert, the camel.
Yeah, you need to have clothes that allow for heat.
Heat resistance, but not fireproof. Those are different.
Just to cool you down, because it's the desert.
But at night it gets very cold.
Yeah.
The game is
the desert.
And God, I just loved this game. Like, the story was handed out in such a way where the memories, which gave you memories of how things used to be, You're from 100 years ago.
Yeah.
It allowed you to traverse the map and get familiar with the lay of the land and then associate certain areas with certain important things. Brent?
So of course I was worried about how the story was going to be delivered because I wanted good story, and I loved the way I was sad, you don't always find them in the right order. So sometimes you have to sit there and piece together where this memory clip went. And I did go back and watch them in order after I had all of them. Man, some of those are just...
Well, Zelda hated you at first.
Oh, yeah.
She hated Link.
I really loved the characterizations of both Zelda and Link. Like,
this was the first time they explicitly stated why he doesn't talk.
And one thing that like was a great seasoning to that storytelling was the diary. Spoiler you can find in Hyrule Castle.
He finds Zelda's diary.
When you find her diary, and then you compare that to like the memory clips, that even takes those memory clips and puts them in a whole different
because
fashion.
The diary says stuff like
she's talking about the day that her father berated her about the technology and not focusing on her teachings to learn the seal to hold Ganon in, and that's one of the memory clips. So you get to hear not just from an outside perspective, but the way she took everything. And one of the best one is the one where in between the ones where she hates Link and she doesn't, and she asks, he talks to her because of course he never talks in the game. She asks him why he doesn't talk, and he says, because the weight of all of this is so much that I don't feel like
Well, because he doesn't want to have a personality that people might not see as heroic. So if he stays silent, it allows people to project whatever heroic persona they want upon him.
But there's one thing, like, just story-wise I really liked about this, because it took the idea of the whole, these are the same people reincarnated over and over again, and, like, they're being held to a stature of the previous versions of them that they can't feel like they live up to.
And that's that's another narrative thing I love to death. Thematically, this was like, there's going to be another Zelda game, there's going to be another Ganon, there's going to be another Link, there's no doubt. But thematically, this was a great like counter to Skyward Sword, because that was the one who was so dead set on his hate. He said, I will come back forever to torment you. And this was an actual embodiment of just the hate. Yeah. Because since he had been slowed down by Zelda, when he comes out, he's not a human. He looks like a total monster.
That thing, it looks like just decayed.
It's a weird giant bug thing.
Is it even it's so just bulbous.
Yeah, it's gross. And then it becomes the personification we've all been familiar with since the first Zelda game, the giant pig monster. I mean, like, it is a perfect counterpoint thematically.
Do we fan out here and say where we think this game lays on in the timeline?
Might as well. I am not putting it anywhere personally. There's some theories about it's a unifier of the timelines, which I'm not cool with that. I'm also against, just real quick, I'm against people who say, well, it could, because it's got the Rito and the Zora in it, even though in Wind Waker, it's implied the Zora turn into the Rito. It doesn't make any sense. So people are like, well, if it's long enough in the future, then some of the Zora could have evolved into the Rito. That's dumb, because in the future of almost any of them, a thing could have happened.
I mean, I'm of the firm belief that it's in the Majora's Mask,
Twilight Princess,
Minish
Cap. No, that's too far back. Four Swords
Adventure. That it's after Four Swords Adventure,
and that is because
there's a lot of details. There's the Zora. One of your side quests, and you'll see them if you're playing the game headed to Zora's domain. There are a bunch of stone tablets that depict the history of the Zora, and a lot of them talk about stuff that was in Ocarina of Time. And there's some stuff that hints at Twilight Princess.
Yeah, but that's where it becomes even fuzzier, is because in the very first memory clip, Zelda, in her coronation of the hero, she says, across time, across the oceans, she references like 4 different games.
Just across the ocean. I
Yes.
just remember her saying
Across
sky,
time, definitely.
Sky, time, and Twilight.
I
just
remember
those 3.
Twilight, and I could have sworn she says ocean too.
I don't remember
could be
ocean.
wrong.
Like, I feel like now I have to go, but I'm positive she didn't say ocean.
I mean, we can look it up after this. Anyways, yeah, so they explicitly reference it.
But
I mean, even...
Off note real fast. Because there can't be... There's oceans right off the cuff.
Yeah, but that is a definite... Like, you don't put those things and be like, there's oceans everywhere. She just said Twilight. Come on. You'd be like, this one's a reference, but the sun goes down every day, Brent. There's always Twilight. Herp. Yeah. If we're going to be that petty.
But also, the layout of Hyrule, the castle town, is similar to Twilight Princess.
Yeah, but even that was an offshoot of Castletown from Ocarina, and that was from everything. And they explicitly reference Ocarina, which only says that this game came somewhere after Ocarina.
Yeah, but so did every game except for Skyward Sword
and Minish Cap and Four Swords, the first one.
Yeah.
And yeah. Anyways.
I mean, there's a lot of story things I like here, and I think I know where it is. We won't know until they make a official timeline adjustment.
And there was something... Oh, the Master Sword in this game. The Master Sword is an optional thing in this game. And I told Brent when he played it, because I beat the game before Brent even picked it up, I said, get the Master Sword first. It's going to be a pain in the butt, but get the Master Sword first. Because the bosses you fight for each of these beasts are different smaller versions of Ganon. But when you have the Master Sword, it becomes invincible and the strongest weapon in the game. And really, it makes them all a joke.
Yeah.
But the catch is, you can, again, go straight to the Master Sword, but the way they gate that, I thought this was ingenious. The Deku Tree goes, you cannot take this sword until you're as strong as you used to be. So he goes, you can try pulling it out if you want, but if you're not strong enough, it'll kill you. So you start pulling it out and your life starts decreasing by a quarter heart. And at the last quarter heart, Deku Tree goes, stop! That is the only time I will save you. And did you try again after that?
No, because I don't think I got to it until after I had enough parts. I think that you telling me that part, I don't think I did.
Okay.
So
it will kill you. I've seen it. And I thought that was a really smart way of gating a very strong weapon. And unlike all the other weapons in this game, because this is the first game where you have switchable equipment, the inventory system in this game is crazy. You do not collect hearts from enemies anymore. You have to cook food. Food is the only way to restore life. You also have different armor you can switch out. Different armor has different resistances. If you have a set of armor, you can get set bonuses. I ended up not caring too much about this other than throwing on stuff for cold resist and heat resist and fireproof, because it turned out the armor...
Extra hearts.
It turned out the armor that I put all my inventory into ended up being the strongest armor in the game on accident. I had no idea. So it ended up, when I beat the game, did I tell you about this? I was playing it concurrently with some people at work, and they're like, well, I go, yeah, I beat the game. And they go, well, what's your item? And I go, 24? And they go, oh yeah, I have pieces of armor that are like 26. I go, pardon? What do you mean, pieces of armor? Like, wait, what? Is your armor overall 24? I'm like, yeah, like all my stuff's level 2 max. Turns out that they had armor in like the 70s or something, because when you have all the ancient armor, it's 84 or 82.
Yeah, I don't have it fully maxed out in mine, but I was getting up there.
Yeah,
on that
mine's
one.
maxed out, and it's stupid high. And my full set wasn't as strong as one maxed out piece of the ancient. So I don't know how I beat the game. I guess I'm just really good at dodging, but the enemies in this game, like, they could present a challenge. There was a certain sense of wonder when you were traveling and you saw suddenly a giant centaur lion. You're like, what is that thing? And then he jumped about 70 feet and impaled you. You're like, ooh.
The first time I saw that after you talked about it, I'm like, let's just walk over. Uh-oh. I'm like, that's a no fun. Gotta run.
The silver one of those things, because in this game there are 4 different kinds of enemies. The normal ones, which are usually red, the stronger ones, which are blue, the semi-strongest, the ones you'll see most often when your equipment's high enough, the black ones, and then the really rare silver ones.
There's also white.
Not all the lions. The lions,
No, they're white because they're white Boblicans. Yeah, well, I remember taking pictures of them.
Is that above blue then? So. Anyways, we're getting stuck up on details. The silver version of the centaur lions have more HP than the final boss. However, they're also susceptible to those high-tech arrows we originally talked about, which will kill anything except bosses and spider robots in one hit.
So one thing I want to say about the final boss thing, because I didn't... So thematically, if you get all of the beasts saved and all the guardians, I mean, thematically that battle is awesome, but I was expecting it because of all the other previous game Ganondorf fights, you know, they're so long, and this one was so short.
Well, it was, but you also were very prepared for it.
True, but also the beasts kick that down.
They knock it in half.
Yeah.
And fun fact, if you don't have the beasts, whatever beast you don't have, you fight Ganon in that form first. So if you go straight there, you have to fight the 4 Guardian Ganons first.
Nope.
Yeah, a trick I didn't realize, and this is what Brent was talking about, is that there's always a item that the bosses are susceptible to, like a ability of your Sheikah Slate. And I didn't realize for the Water Ganon, the Elephant Ganon, that was the Ice ability. So Brent saw me go through about 90 arrows, knocking these ice blocks down manually.
So when you use the Sheikah Tablet Ice ability, you can make ice pillars in water. You can shatter them. Well, that ability comes in handy when an elephant is shooting ice balls at you.
It comes in handy when Ganon is shooting ice balls at you. Oh, yeah. I still didn't figure it out at that point. Ooh. Yeah.
That was.
Yes, it was. It sucked. Anyways, so the way that it approaches these things is amazing. The way that it introduces... So when you meet people, they will very often give you quests. This is a game that explicitly has quests. And what's amazing about these quests is usually you have a decent idea of what you're supposed to do, but a lot of times they'll send you to an area you might not otherwise go to. For example, in one village, they say, if you follow these 3 trees in a line toward the sea, you'll find something. Turns out that you'll just find a shrine there, which in this game, for every 4 shrines that you beat, you have the ability to upgrade your stamina or get a heart container if you cash them in with the local goddess statue. But that quest, when you follow it to the shrine, that lets you see the other side of a mountain where a giant infected dragon is. You're like, what is going on here?
Because you were talking about how you didn't realize that all the beasts were marked on the map. And all the beasts. So that was one of the things I knew that they were marked on the map. And when I was getting close to the top of the mountain and I saw that, I'm like, uh-oh. Is this one of the beasts? I didn't want to hit this. I don't have the Master Sword yet. What is that? And I'm like, well, it's not one of the beasts because that's not where the marker's at. And I climb up there and I'm like, I cannot take this on right now. I'm like, I'm gonna waltz back this way.
Gonna mosey back that away. Yeah. But that was the first time they formed. That was amazing because they go, this is one of the great dragons. And it's been infected by malice or whatever that purple goopy stuff everywhere was. Mm-hmm. And they introduce a bunch of interesting concepts there. One, they introduce the idea that you can shoot your arrows at the dragons to get stuff off of them. 2, they introduce the idea that different places you shoot the dragon can give you different things. If you shoot anywhere on its body, it can give you a scale. If you shoot its head, it can give you a horn. And if you shoot its mouth, it gives you teeth.
I never got teeth.
If you ever want to upgrade any of the the amiibo gear, eventually you'll have to get a tooth.
Oh, okay.
So now you know.
Now I know.
So, I mean, that's just the way that they introduced those ideas, and it was amazing. And what was more amazing about it was the fact it didn't pigeonhole you. It didn't force you to go in any certain way, even when doing stuff like that. For example, even months later, people were finding out quirky little ways to do things. I remember when you sent me your first message about Breath of the Wild, I think this is a direct quote. I just cut down a tree. This game is awesome. So what I saw was what people were doing was they were cutting down trees, stasising it while it was falling, knocking the hell out of it, jumping on it, and riding it to the top of Hyrule Castle. Yeah.
What is this, the General Tao from Dragon Ball Z here? Lost the reference?
Yeah,
okay, anyone who
just keep moving. Stay on focus. Anyways, so that was just the kind of inventiveness that this game rewarded. For example, there was one point where there was a big door in a snowy field.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't remember how you get it started, but what you have to do is start rolling a snowball near the top, put it into a rut, and it gathers up all the snow and hits it and busts it open. Like, this game was amazing. I sunk so much time into it. I got over 100 shrines when all was said and done.
Didn't get that many, but I'd have to look and see how much. I've got a lot of stuff that I didn't expect to get.
But all the memories, there are 12 or 16. I think there's 12.
Yeah.
There's 12 memories you can find. There's approximately 2 memories per divine beast you beat. That has to do with the champions. I think Nabooru has an extra one. And then there are 2 memories associated with the Master Sword. Maybe only 1. Anyways, and then you also get a final memory from Impa. She goes, go to this place and find the final memory, which is dark. And yeah. But everything about this game, not everything. If we want to be really critical, I'm sure I could find something that was problematic with it. And they even found a way to remedy this. The screen could get real busy. They had a way to turn it off. You could turn off everything but your hearts. So you didn't have a temperature. I know it wasn't super obtrusive for guys like us who nowadays your heads-up display has 90 things. But that game was gorgeous.
Yes, it was.
So if you turned off everything but your hearts, you basically got...
Just sitting up on the one mountain waiting for a star piece to fall, just looking at Hyrule. That was amazing.
That was super good. And I feel like this is an adequate amount of fanboying compared to what with the Skyward Sword.
I feel like we could go on with this one, but
we could have done an episode solely about this. We would have got way more into the characterization of the champions, but we're talking just about our general opinion of the game. I loved this game. I have no idea where the next one's going to go. I don't know what they can do to improve on this.
I think a lot like you talked about how Ocarina was what set the template for the next 5.
4,
I think,
yeah.
Okay, 4 after it. I think this is the template, at least probably for another 1 or 2.
Yeah, but how are they going to improve on this? I know that's a very short-sighted thing to say. Yeah. How do you improve on what is one of the best? But we'll see. But I adored this game. I know, and this is why I was so hesitant to bring it up. I had die-hard Microsoft, Xbox people coming over, and I booted it up, and they're like, how can I get this game? Well,
yeah.
Let's see what you can do.
Yep.
Oh, it looks so good, so good. I almost want to go.
I remember when you told me this was the Zelda game I didn't know I wanted. And I was like, that's some lofty opinion there. Because our Zelda games don't always match up. And I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing.
This Zelda game has so much stuff you didn't know you wanted, and now that you have it, yeah, I think I sunk the least amount of time into it of anybody I know, and it was still 70 hours.
Oh yeah, I had to sunk in more than that.
Yeah.
And just the amount on those Master Sword trials.
Okay, so this game was also the first official Zelda game. I say it that way because Hyrule Warriors we decided not to touch upon.
Yeah.
That has DLC. It came as a season pass. The first one was mostly comprised of challenge levels to level up your Master Sword
dungeon and the neat Easter egg costumes.
Yeah, costumes based on other Zelda games. And the second one that's coming out is going to be based on the champions that you interact with. We barely talked about them, so we won't get into much. But it should be coming out in holiday season of 2017.
Maybe we touch on that after it comes out?
Possibly. We'll probably circle around to it. But anyways, final opinion on this one was I loved it to death. If I didn't still have the DLC, the second DLC to do, this is the first 3D Zelda game I could see myself really jumping back into without an HD version. Yeah, this game was so good.
Yeah.
So good.
Oh my god.
Anyways, before we need to wipe up after ourselves, Brent, did you have anything else you wanted to add on this?
It's just so good.
It's so good. And is there anything else you wanted to add about 3D Zelda games in general?
It's hard for me. This is probably my favorite one. I mean, bar none. This is probably the best, my favorite one. But it's Zelda. It's hard for me to say, oh, I hate one. I don't really hate any of them.
If you had to rank them, think about it, because I can run down of these 6, my favorite to least favorite. I can run down while you think. So, Breath of the Wild was my favorite. My least favorite was Skyward Sword. My second least favorite was probably, and this is not that it's bad, would be Ocarina of Time. Above that would be Twilight Princess. Above that would be Majora's Mask. Then Wind Waker HD. Then this game.
Breath of the Wild is definitely my favorite. Probably second favorite would be Majora's Mask, maybe? I feel like it has a lot of replay value to it.
It has an enormous amount of replay value.
I think, oddly enough, after replaying it again, Twilight Princess may come in third.
Okay.
It's at least tied with Wind Waker.
All right, 4, 5, 6. So then Wind Waker would be next.
And then after Wind Waker, Skyward Sword, and then, Ocarina of Time is my least favorite.
Okay. All right. I mean, and again, doesn't mean it's bad.
No, I love all these games.
Yeah. I don't love all of them, but I played all of them. Anything else on this before we wrap up the series, Brett?
No, I think we're good. I wish we had more time.
I know. And we can get into the specifics at some other point, because at some point we're going to do one on environmental storytelling. Breath of the Wild is definitely coming up. We're going to compare and contrast Breath of the Wild with the Dark Souls game / Blood. I mean,
I like that I watched it. I watched you play enough Bloodborne. I feel like I can talk about it.
You probably can, and I can compare it with other games. But that's neither here nor there. I'm getting ahead of myself. Brent, thank you very much for suggesting this series and coming on.
Yeah.
Jump online. Tell us what you loved about Skyward Sword, if you did for some reason. What you adored about Breath of the Wild because you're a normal human. What did we gloss over on this entire series you wish we would have touched on more? Let us know your opinions on Facebook, etc. But until next time, my name is Josh, and this is Co-Opinions.